I've been sitting in front of a blank screen for 3 days trying to figure out how to start this. I keep writing the first sentence and deleting it, writing it again, deleting it again, because talking about this feels like I'm betraying someone I love. But I keep getting messages from people watching someone close to them disappear into something they don't understand, and I think it's time I finally say it out loud. This is about my best friend Marco.
Marco and I met in college. Sophomore year, terrible dorm room, one broken radiator that only worked when you kidded exactly twice on the left side. We figured that out together. That's the kind of friendship it was, figuring things out together. He was the kind of person who remembered your coffee order, who showed up at 2 a.m. when you texted saying you were having a bad night, who laughed so loud in movie theaters that other people would turn around and then somehow end up laughing too. He was magnetic. He was my person. I didn't see it happening. That's the thing nobody tells you about gambling addiction. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk through the door wearing a sign. It disguises itself as fun, as excitement, as just a thing guys do on weekends. It started with football, fantasy sports, then actual betting. Small stuff, $20 here, $50 there. He'd text me after a game, "Bro, I just won $200. You should try this." And it seemed harmless, fun even. I placed a few bets myself. Won some, lost some, moved on. What I didn't notice was that Marco never moved on.
The first sign I can pinpoint, and I hate that I missed it, was money. Marco stopped suggesting restaurants. He'd always been the one to say, "Let's try that new place," or "I'm buying." Suddenly he was always "not really hungry," or "I ate already." I thought he was being responsible. I literally thought, good for him. I had no idea. Then came the loan. $300, behind on rent, roommate bailed last minute. I gave it to him without blinking. Of course I did. This was Marco. Weeks passed, another month. I didn't say anything because I figured he'd pay me back when he could. He never paid me back. Not because he didn't want to, because it was gone the same day I gave it to him. He told me that later, much later. The thing that actually broke through to me happened on a Thursday night in February. He called out of nowhere, and I almost didn't pick up, but something made me answer. He was crying. I had never, in 10 years of friendship, heard Marco cry. Not when his dad got sick, not when his long-term girlfriend left, not when he didn't get the job he'd interviewed 3 times for. But that night, on the phone, he was completely falling apart. And then he said something I will never forget for the rest of my life. He said, "I've been hoping something bad would happen to me so I'd have an excuse to stop." I didn't say anything. I couldn't, because in that sentence, I understood the full weight of what I'd been missing. This wasn't someone who was careless with money or chasing a thrill. This was someone who had lost so much, so quietly, so privately, that part of him had started looking for an exit, not from gambling, from everything. I pulled over. I was driving. I pulled over and I just sat there with the phone against my face. And I said, "I'm coming over right now." And he said, "No, you don't have to." And I said, "Marco, I'm coming over right now." Here's what I've come to understand about gambling addiction that I didn't understand then. It isn't about greed. People hear gambling problem and they think lazy, stupid, morally broken. But that's not what I watched happen to my friend. What gambling gave Marco, especially in the beginning, was a feeling, a very specific, very powerful feeling that nothing else in his life was giving him at the time. The illusion of control. He was in a job he hated, a relationship that had quietly gone cold, a family situation I won't go into. His life felt like a series of things happening to him, but in a bet, in that exact moment between placing the money and seeing the result, he felt like he was the one making something happen, like the world was responding to his choices. Even when he lost, the next bet was a chance to correct it. I think about that a lot because we live in a world that is constantly telling men to have it together, to be fine, to handle it. And when you're drowning in silence, anything that makes you feel even briefly like you're the one steering, you grab it, even if it's pulling you under. Addiction isn't weakness. It's a human being trying to survive feelings they don't have the tools to carry. I didn't walk away. That's not always the right choice. I want to be clear about that. Sometimes people in addiction become dangerous. Sometimes the lying goes so deep the relationship becomes corrosive. Sometimes you genuinely cannot be what they need, and knowing when to step back is not failure. Please hear that. But for me, with Marco, I stayed, and I won't pretend it was graceful because it absolutely was not. I said the wrong things. I got angry when I should have listened. I gave advice when I should have just sat with him. I treated it like a logic problem when it was an emotional wound. What I got right was this. I didn't pretend it wasn't happening. One afternoon, just the two of us, no phones, nothing to hide behind, I said, "I see you. I don't understand everything you're going through, but I see you, and I'm not going anywhere. That's it. That's all I said." And something in him shifted. Not fixed, fixed, not cured, just shifted. He started talking, really talking, for the first time in maybe 2 years. Recovery isn't linear. I know that sounds like a motivational poster, but it's true in the most unglamorous way possible. There were months where Marco seemed completely fine and then relapsed quietly. There were weeks where he was doing everything right and something would happen and he'd fall backward. There were moments I genuinely didn't know if he was going to make it through this. I'm telling you this because if you're watching someone you love go through something similar, I don't want to give you a clean story. I want to give you the real one. The real one has arguments in parking lots at midnight. It has being lied to and knowing you're being lied to and not knowing what to do with that. It has your own grief because yes, you grieve. You grieve the version of your friend that existed before. That grief is valid and real and something nobody talks about enough. But the real one also has Marco. Today, 2 years into actual recovery, calling me on a random Tuesday just to talk. No crisis, no emergency, just to tell me about a podcast he heard or a girl he met or something his mom said that made him laugh. Just being present, just being here. I want to speak to someone for a second. If you're watching this and you recognize someone in what I'm describing, the disappearing money, the shifting personality, the secrets, the distance, the way they're there but somehow not quite there anymore, your instincts are probably right. And I want you to know that silence is also a choice. Reach out today, not tomorrow, not when things get worse. You don't need the perfect thing to say. You don't need a plan. You just need to show up. And if you're watching this and you recognize yourself, if there's a quiet part of you that knows something has gotten out of hand, I want you to hear this. The people who love you are not as blind as you think they are. They already see it. They're not waiting for you to be perfect before they show up. They're waiting for you to let them. When Marco and I finally talked honestly, really honestly, for the first time, he told me he'd been terrified that if I knew the truth, I'd see someone weak, someone embarrassing, someone who couldn't handle his own life. And I told him what I'll say here, because I think someone watching this needs to hear it. Knowing the truth didn't make me see him as less. It made me see him as more, because there is nothing easy about carrying what he was carrying alone for that long. And there is nothing weak about finally putting it down. That's not a small thing. That took more courage than most people will ever have to find. Marco gave me permission to share this, actually, and this is very him. He told me to make sure I said he's embarrassed by how emotional I'm getting, that he's fine, and that I seriously need to relax. He's fine. And I love him. If you or someone you know is struggling with gambling, the National Problem Gambling Helpline is available 24 hours. 1-800-522-4700. Free, confidential, no judgment. You don't have to figure out the radiator alone. If this hit close to home, share it with someone who needs it.